Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture titled Human Sexuality and Adolescent Sexual Behavior. My name is Professor Ademola Ajuwon from Department of Health Promotion and Education, College of Medicine, University of Ibadan. So let's start with the definition of who an adolescent is. According to the World Health Organization, an adolescent is someone who is aged 10 to 19 years. And the period of adolescence can be divided into two. The early adolescence, which is between age 10 to 14 years, and late adolescence, which is between 15 and 19 years. So with this definition, we know that the adolescent stage is an interface or a period of transition between childhood and adulthood. The other common terms that are often used to describe young people are youth and then young people. So a youth is someone who is aged 15 to 24 years, while a young person is an individual aged 10 to 24 years. So when we talk about young person, we talk about people who are aged between 10 to 24 years. That is one way of defining who an adolescent is, using age, chronological age. But we could also define the period of adolescence by some social definition. In some communities, the participation in rites of passage confers adulthood to the individual, regardless of his or her age. For example, among the Yoruba of Southwest Nigeria, an individual is considered an adult once he or she marries. So regardless of the age, once the individual has married, he or she is automatically regarded as an adult. Among the Zulu of South Africa too, a boy is considered to have passed the stage of, to have reached the state of adulthood when he becomes circumcised. So in this community, circumcision is that rite of passage among the Zulu, whereas among the Yoruba, marriage is a rite of passage. So we can look at the period of adolescence definition from two perspectives, using chronological age, at the same time using social definition. However, one universally acceptable definition of a young person is that although is no longer a child, a young person is not yet considered an adult. Although no longer a child, the young person is not yet considered an adult. So, as I said earlier, this phase is that of transition between childhood and adulthood. Now, what are some of the characteristics of an adolescent person? First is that it's a period of self-consciousness or self-awareness. A period of self-consciousness or self-awareness. It's also a period where there's intense growth in the physical characteristics of the individual. So, for example, the size and shape of the body change, and there's a difference between boys and girls in these changes. For boys, there's increase in the genital organs, there's growth of hair in the genital area, and the voice becomes deepened. For girls, menstruation setting, and there's growth and development of the breast. At this particular time, the reproductive capacity of both the male and the female adolescent is established. Okay? So these are pictures of young persons who are enjoying life. Now, why are adolescents an important segment of the population? The first reason is that their sheer size of the number of adolescents and the young person in Nigeria. So if you look at the 2006 national census, young people who are aged 10 to 24 years constitute 31% of the Nigerian population. 31% of the Nigerian population. So that is one reason, the sheer size, the sheer large number of adolescents. Secondly, many adolescents and young people engage in risky practices which increase their risk of undesirable consequences of sexual activities. The third reason is that adolescents represent the potential for the future of any community. Therefore, there is need to invest in this population if the country is to get the best from them. The last reason why this group is important is that adolescents and young persons have a lot of enthusiasm, energy, and optimism, both for themselves and for their country. And any society should be able to harness this enthusiasm and energy into positive use, so that that community can have a group of people who grow up to become responsible and productive adults. So for these four reasons, adolescents and young persons are very important in Nigeria. Now let's look at the sexuality. What is sexuality? Let's have a definition of it. So sexuality is a major aspect of being human throughout life, according to WHO. WHO also says sexuality encompasses sex, it encompasses gender identity and roles, it encompasses sexual orientation, eroticism, pleasure, intimacy, and reproduction. So that's what sexuality is all about. Now, what is sexuality education? What is sexuality education? This is a process of learning about how an individual can be comfortable about all aspects of being human. A process of learning how an individual can be comfortable about all aspects of being human. Sexuality education is also the process of providing information, skills, and services that enable people to adopt safe sexual behavior. So such practices include abstinence from sex, having non-penetrative sex such as hugging and holding hands, and providing correct and consistent use of condoms for those who are already sexually active. So sexually healthy behaviors also include seeking care from trained health workers during the incidence of any disease, such as sexually transmitted infections, unwanted pregnancy, and even infertility. So from this definition, we know that sexuality education is comprehensive. It includes providing information, it includes providing skills, it includes providing services that will help young people to be able to take informed decisions about their reproductive health. So why is sexuality education important for adolescents and young persons? One reason is that adolescents reach sexual maturity before they develop mental or emotional maturity. So in other words, the adolescent person and other young people, they attain sexual maturity first before mental or emotional maturity. Okay, and they do this before they acquire the skills that are needed to appreciate the consequences of their sexual activity. And we know that the reproductive health needs of young people are largely unmet in Nigeria. One reason is that they lack knowledge about reproduction. Some people do not know that pregnancy can occur during the first sexual encounter. Some are sexually active. They do not want to become pregnant, but they don't take any protection. Okay? So the second reason why sexuality education is important is that many young people in Nigeria have what we call unmet need. How do we know this? We know this because they lack knowledge about reproductive health. They don't know that pregnancy can occur during the first sexual episode. Some are sexually active. They don't want to become pregnant, but yet they do not take any protection. So usually the consequence is unintended pregnancy. Okay? And investment in sexuality education will pay dividend in the long run. So that is additional reason why sexuality education is important. How will it pay dividend? If the young person receives appropriate education, he will apply that education not only for himself, but when he becomes adult, he can even use that same information for his family. When I say adolescents participate in risky sexual activities, what are the examples of these risky sexual activities? Why they need sexuality education? I have 5 here. The first one is that many start sexual activities early. Secondly, many have sex with casual partners. Thirdly, many have sex with multiple partners. And fourthly, many do not use any protection. And lastly, many adolescents use psychoactive substances. So let's take each one of these risky sexual activities one by one. Let's talk about early sexual activity. Now, the evidence we have from the National Demographic Health Survey of 2018 is that by the age of 18 years, 57% of female and 15% of male reported that they have already had sex. That's a large number. 57% of females, 15% of males said they've already had sexual activity. And we have to even interpret this data with some caution, because many times, because of the sensitivity attached to sexual activities, people tend to underreport it. So, but that is a large percentage of young people who say they are already sexually active by age 18. Now, what are those factors that contribute to participation in early sex? We know that in some parts of Nigeria, girls are forced into early arranged marriages, and they start childbearing when their reproductive organs are not fully developed. It's a reality of life that child marriage still takes place in Nigeria. And many of the girls who are forced to marry at this time are too young to even provide consent. Many of them don't even know the implication of what they are doing and don't know the challenges involved in getting married. In many cases, such girls are married to men who are much older and who already have other wives, a practice that heightens the risk of infection with STI. So that's a social factor contributing to why girls start sex early. Now, I have this map of Nigeria showing the percentage of women who are already married at 15 years by each of the 6 geopolitical zones. In the southwest Nigeria, you have 2.5%. In north central, you have 15% of girls who said they are already married by age 15. In northwest, the percentage is 54.3%. In the northeast, it is 41%. In the south, it is 5.9%. And in the southeast, it is 1.4%. So look at this figure now. The least number of people who report that they have been married by age 15 comes from the southeast with 1.4%. And the largest is from northwest with 54.3%. So when we talk about young girls being married at early age, this is the data that we have. Now, what are those consequences of early sex? The first one is that when girls commence when they commence childbearing too early, they are starting childbearing at a time they are not emotionally stable. Many are not well educated, and this creates a cycle of poverty. Because at age 15, the girl child is supposed to still be in maybe JS3 or SS1. So if by that time that individual has already been married out to an older man who already have 2 or 3 wives, her opportunity for education is interrupted, and that creates a cycle of poverty, because the child that girl is going to bring forth will also fall into the same situation. So that's one important consequence. It creates a cycle of poverty. Okay? The second consequence is that it increases the susceptibility of girls to become infected when they have sex with an infected person. Female adolescents are particularly more vulnerable to infection because the organism that causes STI can more easily penetrate their cervical mucus than that of older women. And the cervix of a young woman is more susceptible to gonorrhea and chlamydia infection. These are all sexually transmitted infections, and particularly the sexually transmitted human papilloma virus, which has been linked with cervical cancer. So any young girl who starts having sex early as 15, increases her own risk of being infected with sexually transmitted infection, and as well as human papilloma virus, which is a cause of cervical cancer. And when the reproductive organs are not fully developed, sex at that particular time can be painful and may result in sores and scrape in the genital area that make infection with STI easier during sex. So you see, the consequences for a young person are devastating when sex starts early. Let's take the second point, sex with a casual partner. So sexual intercourse with a casual partner is risky because it increases the chance of encountering someone who is infected with STI, including HIV and AIDS. According to the 2018 National Demographic Health Survey, 1% of women and 4% of men who are aged 15 to 24 years, that is talking about young people, reported that they had sexual intercourse with more than one non-marital or cohabiting partner in the 12 months preceding the survey. So you see that men reported having multiple partners than women. Okay, why is that so? Is it that men are bragging about this and women are underreporting it? But that's what the data is indicating, that 1% of women and 4% of men reported that they have had sex with a non-marital or cohabiting partner. In other words, this is not a wife, it is not someone the young person is living with, it's just other casual partner. And the majority of the women and men, majority of the women 64% and men 38% did not use a condom. So what are the consequences of sex with a casual partner? The risk of unwanted pregnancy, the risk of STI, the risk of HIV and AIDS is there. What about sex with many partners? This heightens the risk of encountering someone who is infected with an STI. Again, if you look at the National Demographic Health Survey, women who are aged 15 to 25 years are twice as likely as women who are aged 10 to 49 years to have had sex with 2 or more sexual partners in the past 12 months. Okay? So the data is also reflecting what we have said earlier. Okay? Now, let's talk about the use of psychoactive substance. What is a psychoactive substance? We call it a psychoactive substance is any substance that affects the mood, they affect the mind and affect the behavior. Substances that make someone to be very happy, to be very sad, to be very unhappy. Examples of such drugs include cigarette, alcohol, cannabis or Indian hemp, heroin, and even cocaine. They are called psychoactive because they affect and change the mood. The abuse of psychoactive substance can progress from experimentation to frequent use to dependence or addiction. When we say somebody experiment with a psychoactive substance, it means that the person try it out. And many young people, when they try it once, they stop it. But some graduate from experimentation to frequent use to dependence or addiction. What does addiction mean? Somebody is addicted to a psychoactive substance if the individual need to take that particular substance in order to perform his daily functions. In other words, if the person have not taken the drug, he cannot walk, he cannot he cannot carry out all other activities that he or she is used to. So that's what we mean by dependence or addiction. And when people get to this stage, it's very difficult to stop taking the drug. So, although the use of psychoactive substance is common in all ages, but adolescents and young people are the groups mostly affected. And alcohol is the most widely used drug among young persons. When we talk about alcohol, we talk about those that are brewed like beer, star lager, stout, even traditional drink. Okay, we also talk about even palm wine. Okay, so alcohol is the most widely abused drug. Alcohol is readily available to adolescents, and its consumption has become so normal because the drug is readily available wherever you go. Even young people now have the drug in sachet that are sold at shops. So the alcohol is readily available, and because of its availability, many young persons use it. The use of alcohol contributes to accidents because when you take the drug, particularly alcohol, you may become under the influence. Being under the influence means that you are not able to take all the precautions that you would normally take to prevent involvement in any risky activity. So it contributes to accident, road traffic accident, it contributes to suicide, it contributes to violence, it contributes to unwanted pregnancy and STI among young persons. So it's a very serious matter, and we should discourage young people from using this drug. So I've already said the problem with alcohol is that it affects judgment and increases chances of risky behavior. There are other problems that alcohol is associated with, and for lack of time, we will not be going to it. So, what are those consequences of risky sexual sex among adolescents? We've already mentioned unwanted pregnancy. Many young people don't want to become pregnant. Unfortunately, they are having sex and they are not using any protection. And once you are not using any protection, it results in a pregnancy that is unwanted. We've talked about infection with STI. We talk about unsafe abortion and their complications. Why do young people resort to abortion? Because many of them are in school. In secondary school, once you become pregnant, you are expelled. And once you are expelled, the opportunity of returning back to school is very limited. So to avoid this, some people go to quacks, untrained person, in order to have the pregnancy aborted. Unfortunately, many die in the process because of the complications. Some young people drop out of school, and even some die in the process of getting the abortion. So what are the interventions that need to be put in place to ensure that young people do not suffer from all these undesirable consequences? The first thing is that we should integrate sexuality education into the existing curricula at the primary, secondary, and tertiary level. We are already doing this as part of the general education studies. And the content of such curricula should be age-specific to ensure that all the needs of adolescents are met. Those are in primary schools, we emphasize the abstinence. Those are already who are in the senior classes who may have sex, we encourage safe sex, such as practice of secondary abstinence or use of protection, such as condom. There's also need for cooperation between government and the private sector in creating youth-friendly environment where young people can go and relax and have recreational activities. Okay, and more effort should be made by both government and non-governmental organizations about the importance of gender equality. How does equality come in? Girls who are forced to marry men against their own wish is a violation of their rights, and they cannot reach their full potential with their male counterpart when they are forced into early marriage. And young people need to be fully involved in the planning and delivery of sexuality education so that this education can be meaningful and relevant to their needs. Thank you very much, and that is the end of the lecture. Thank you.